Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today we're going overseas. We're going across the Atlantic, the great pond, as the Americans say. And I'm going to speak to an American, a lovely chap, who has just written a book called Rogues in Black Robes. This is about the judicial system in America. He is a man who has been in front of a trial by jury, representing himself. I'm fascinated to learn about that because we know how corrupt the court system is over here. And he tells me it is even worse over in America. He's keen to know how bad it is here too. So we've got a lot in common. Also, police harassment and excessive force that is being used. His name is Brian Vukadinovich, and he joins me now. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me on the show here. I've seen some of your work, and you do an outstanding job, and it's an honor for me to be on here with you.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come over. We'd be fascinated to find out more about the police excessive force, the court judicial service, and how corrupt that is. It's very corrupt over here, and we're looking over into America for all sorts of things, seeing all sorts of nonsense coming back, and it's very hard to get a picture because you look on YouTube and other platforms, some of it's truth, some of it's half truth, and some of it's just completely made up, and we're all at a loss. And I'm sure that's the same the other way round with some of you Americans looking here. So it's going to be a fantastic conversation. You've been writing about the corruption for a while. You've got a number of books. I mentioned at the beginning Rogues in Black Robes. That's a very apt title, I think, and many people over here will totally agree with you. They are rogues, are they not?
Yes. Well, in America, the one of the problems with corruption in America is, and believe me, I'm not the only one concerned about it. There's plenty of people, millions of people actually, in the United States that are trying to file judicial misconduct complaints against the judges in their cases. And I did the research on that as well. And the research shows, and I wrote about this in the book. The research shows that almost 100%, it's something like 99 point something percent of all of the judicial misconduct cases that are filed in the United States are dismissed. So, so the judges, they have so much, they have this word discretion. Oh, the judge has the discretion whether he recuses himself or not.
Hmm.
Uh, we need in America, and probably in England as well, we need regular common people to sit on these review boards that make these decisions. Because right now it's just judges covering for judges. We have in America the judicial, when to be a federal judge, you have to be nominated by the president of the United States, and then it has to be confirmed by the Senate. So then there's a judiciary process, a Senate confirmation hearing, and just not long ago, uh, we had some confirmation hearings with Amy Coney Barrett, a Supreme Court justice people in England might have heard of. I don't know if the Roe v. Wade decision has reached England like in America, it's a big deal.
Right.
And I'm
Okay.
not going to discuss the political part of it, but
No. No.
that's up to people to decide how they want, which way they don't want to go with that. It's an abortion thing. But what I am going to discuss is the legal part of how these confirmation hearings, when they testified, Amy Coney Barrett, uh, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, when they testified, they each testified that they follow precedent.
Right.
In
And
America,
I'm taking it that they're not actually doing that.
no, they're not doing it at all.
Right.
Uh, so, and they're getting away with it. And now,
Yes.
my point is this: when they testify at a Senate confirmation process, there's a federal statute in the United States where lying to Congress is punishable by fine and imprisonment of up to 5 years. So
Right.
when these judges testify, and particularly they testified about Roe versus Wade, that they would follow, they call it stare decisis in America. It's precedent, but that's
Yeah.
the fancy term for it. Oh, we follow precedent, and in Roe versus Wade, we would follow and then as soon as they got on there, they reversed Roe versus Wade. So they lied at their Senate confirmation hearings. Now, I actually wrote a blog about it on my website about this law. See, in America, people just mostly feel all you can do is impeach the judges, and in America these days that's almost impossible because of the
Right.
political divide right now. So it's not going to happen. But the federal authorities, the law enforcement, can actually prosecute them. And if these judges were prosecuted for violating that federal law, then they wouldn't have a tendency then to come in the future and lie at their conference. So
Yes.
that's a problem. So then we end up with all these lying judges, dishonest judges.
What's it like for the ordinary man and woman in the street who are over here? We have a problem with things like council tax. People are being taken. The judges don't seem to be acting on their oath. You cannot get deeds of assignment. The writs are not signed by judges. People are very reluctant to sign any paperwork over here. And so now when people are perhaps if they haven't paid something because they don't feel it's correct, you're having enforcement agents coming along. They don't have the paperwork, and these guys are sort of forcing people to pay without the correct documentation. Is that a similar thing over in the States?
100%. And I'm guessing in England, the people that is happening to, a lot of them probably are representing themselves. Would that be fair to say, or do most of them
Well,
have lawyers?
I mean, the problem we have is if they do have a solicitor, the solicitor themselves has taken an oath to the private bar guild and is working firstly for them and secondly for their client. Well, lastly for the client because they're working for the court second and so on. But people don't know. They think that they are doing the best they can, that they've been told they must have a solicitor or a lawyer or a barrister, whatever. And very few people have the guts or the gumption or the knowledge to represent themselves.
Well, in America, there's a law. It's called the Judiciary Act of 1789. And in the Judiciary Act signed by George Washington, President George Washington in 1789, it was an act of Congress George Washington signed, and that law gives the people in America the right to represent themselves. That's right in the Judiciary Act of
Right.
1789. But when you walk into the courtroom and you try to represent yourself, lawyers are walking all over the person. The judges are walking, stomping all over the person as if the person didn't, as if the person is basically treated as a second class citizen
Yeah.
because he doesn't have a lawyer, because the courts in America, it's all money driven. It's
Yes.
all about money. And nobody will convince me. In fact, I can tell you this. In the 1980s, I think this will answer your question. In the 1980s, there was a it was a 3-year, 8-month federal undercover operation. It was called Operation Greylord, where the feds found out. They put people out there with microphones and so forth, with lawyers, and they found out about all of these judges being bribed, accepting bribes, millions of dollars, and and then in the end, there were 103 judges, lawyers, and court personnel that were indicted with convictions and so forth. But interestingly, after that, you don't hear about any federal sting operations after that. So money is in play. It's all about money. And in America, in the family courts, it's a big problem because these lawyers are very friendly. These state court lawyers are very friendly
Yes.
with the state court judges. They actually had a case in Pennsylvania with a judge. He had this kickback thing going on. He had a couple of buddies, and they built these big facilities. And then this judge made a deal. I will send all of the juveniles to your facility, which they have to pay for. The juveniles, as part of their sentence, they have to pay a fine, and then they have to pay to stay at that facility that the judge orders them to go to for a timely period. And then the owner of those facilities then would pass back several $1 million. In particular, in Pennsylvania, it involved $2.6 million in kickbacks. It was actually called cash for kids.
My goodness.
Cash for
They're
kids.
telling you right there, aren't they?
Right there it
How,
is. So in it,
how long do you think this corruption has been going? I mean, we've seen it gathering pace in recent times, and everybody, it seems, is now talking about it. Obviously, on both sides of the Atlantic. But how long has it been creeping in?
well,
I mean, was there a
I,
time when you could stand in front of a judge
I,
and you would get a fair trial?
I think honestly, I think I'm seven. I'm going to be 73 here pretty soon, and so I've been around for a while, and I've had these litigation things going on with the police and so forth that maybe we can
Sure.
talk about. So I truly believe early on there was a lot of fairness that was going on. The judges were fair and actually good people with integrity, and but that has over the years has been changing. And
Mm.
now with the age of the internet, people are able to put more information out where before you couldn't. So there were probably a lot more going on that we even knew about. But I know from studying law, case laws, and so forth, that 40 years ago, decisions that were coming out of the Supreme Court and the federal courts were much more fair to people than they are these days. So it's evolved into a very, very. I think the answer to the question is it's probably always been corruption of some level from day one, and over the years to today, it's alarmingly widespread. I truly believe that. I really do. And now
D-
I
d-
think
d-
there's a solution. I think there
okay.
I think there's a solution. And I've written about it. Now, in America, there was an issue years ago. Employers wanted to be able to take polygraph tests, lie detector
Yeah, lie
tests
detectors. Yeah.
against their employees to make sure they're not stealing and so forth. And there was litigation over it. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, that's fine. Employers can do that. It's legal. They can do that. Okay, they have to know if you're honest.
So
So
sorry. Let me just understand that. So you're saying that the employers could do a polygraph test against their employees.
correct,
All
correct,
right.
correct.
I guess the employees couldn't do a polygraph test against their employer to make sure that they weren't corrupt.
You guessed right. And so my thought is that, well, if the court feels that it's appropriate and legal for the employer to take the polygraph exam of the employee, then why shouldn't the courts, the judges themselves, be required to take a yearly polygraph exam where they could be asked, have you accepted any money under the table in any
Yes.
cases?
Well,
Now
that
think
would be a
about that.
yes.
That would cure.
How accurate is a polygraph test?
Well, the accuracy rate is actually pretty high. I,
Right.
I, I actually wrote about it, and I can't remember off the top of my head. It's something like, give or take, it's something like it's close to like between an 85 and a 90% percentile of accuracy, with a
Right.
little bit where they can't actually make the distinction. So
Would that
for that
I,
reason, they're not allowed in courts.
right? I was going to say because, like most technology, it can be
Right,
manipulated. It can
right,
break down.
right,
It can give false results. We
right,
saw false
right,
results with PCR tests recently, if you remember
right,
4 years ago when we had a certain thing.
right.
So therefore, why would that be allowed for an employer to test the employee?
Exactly. There's a lot of different ways you can think about this. And even in court, for them to say, well, it's not 100% reliable, no evidence in court is 100%. That's why you're able to put rebuttal witnesses on. Well, that's
Right.
not true. So that doesn't fly. That doesn't
Yes.
fly.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that in the United States, if the judges were required to take a yearly polygraph test, probably three-quarters of them wouldn't be there
No.
because they would flunk the test. And but the good part of it is if they know they're going to be asked that question, then they can't. Then they have to be on the up and up. They can't take bribes and conduct themselves dishonestly. So that is a solution,
That
but
is a
it's not
solution.
going to happen.
Before we started recording, you said to me that the American system is based on the English common law. Is that still the situation? And has it been changed or superseded by the private bar guild's private corporation?
Well, in the English common law system, it's based upon judicial decisions that are embodied in reports of decided cases, precedents. And
Right.
that's what's happening, or at least supposed to be happening in the United States. Now, the English common law also relies a lot on legislation that takes
Yes.
place in England, from what I've researched.
Absolutely.
Now, in American law, not so much so. Somewhat, but not nearly as much as the English common law. But both share the same aspect that relies on the decisions. However, in America, the judiciary, while they're supposed to be relying on precedents, in fact, in my case, I've cited several precedents. I talked about how they won't let me conduct discovery. I cited four cases,
Right.
precedents where the judges in this said, no, that's no good. We don't do it. But yet they
Now
didn't
it's funny you
follow.
should say that because we do get. I mean, we'll hear that in court. I mean, I'll hear it through the show with people who come on and they'll say, this is case law. It's set a precedent. That's what case law is. And the judge has said, well, we're not dealing with that here, and just dismisses it as if he has some additional law system that he's decided to work by and not the common one or the accepted version that everybody else thinks they're working by, which
Well,
which again is not right.
there you go. That's corruption.
It comes
Corruption
all the
number
way.
10. It's just,
We we have civil cases and then we have criminal cases. Is that the same in America? So if it's debts and things like that, it would be civil, and you have one set of courts. But however,
yes,
you cross the line and it then becomes criminal, you have a
yes.
different system. That's the same?
Same system. Yes, I'm in the civil system right now. So if you were
Right.
charged with a crime, extortion, and so forth, it would be in the criminal system. And I noticed, and when doing my research here, I was always fascinated by the wigs that the judges wear in England,
Yes.
and then I just learned that while they used to all wear them, which I thought was kind of a neat thing, actually, it showed a little bit of integrity to the system, how special the system is. And then I've just learned that only in the criminal courts now do they wear the wigs.
Right. Yes, I don't know for 100%. I try to avoid the courts myself as much as
Yeah,
I physically can, as indeed a lot of people
yeah,
probably would
yeah.
do. They say that the black robes and all of this is from ancient rituals, that it sort of stems back to satanic practices. Is that any in your research?
I haven't gotten that far yet, but I'm glad
Right.
you brought it up because I will now, because I actually titled my book "Rogues in Black Robes." Uh,
Absolutely.
and it's
T-
in America. In America, when the judge walks in with his black robe on, the judge almost feels like he or she is a god,
mm,
and the people must stand and almost bow in reverence. When in reality, all that judge is a lawyer wearing a
right.
black robe. That's all that is. That judge didn't come through some special, okay, I've been trained to be a judge in judge school. That never happens. They're just lawyers, politically connected
Yes.
lawyers.
It's all a big theatrical thing, but
That's
I mean, presumably you've got that, of course, from our English traditions
right.
and ways of doing it, and they carry it on in America.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's a big show. they,
Showing authority.
your honor, and they're up above you, and you have to almost bow to them. And at the same time, they're taking kickbacks. They're screwing people over on their cases. They do it on a
Yes.
daily basis, and then you have to show all of this reverence. I think the people need to be aware of the reality. It's a show, is what it is.
And
Let's see fair decisions. If you want to be called your honor, then proceed with honor. There's no
right.
honor in dishonor, and that's
Yeah,
what's happening both in
and
England and America.
And are you? I mean, over here we're being challenged, or people are challenging the system and saying that this is the law of admiralty. This is this system where it's about being at sea, and that the person business of using your birth certificate and all that. Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of it. There's maritime laws here, and that there's a lot of cases involving maritime laws that happen, things that happen at sea, and so forth. And yeah, it's actually pretty close between the two systems, actually. Some different terminologies here or there, but it's pretty close actually, from what I've
Right.
seen.
Yeah. So, I mean, because over here there's a lot of people. There's a huge movement of people looking at the law system and trying to unravel I suppose, the historical context, and saying there's two jurisdictions: the law of the land and the law of the sea, or maritime law, admiralty law, and all of
Yeah.
that. And that, but it all comes down
It,
to the fact that it's a bank really trying
yeah.
to get money out of you. And
Yeah, it's that way here too. There is a system for the maritime law complaints that happen on sea, and so forth. So that's here as well.
right. Okay. Now, earlier you were talking about, I was in your email to me, you were talking about the police harassment and the excessive force. We're finding our police. I mean, I had somebody earlier, no, yesterday, telling me about a chap who was walking to a protest, got attacked by the police, and had his head banged against the ground. We've seen, of course, famously, 4 years ago now, or more, it was the policeman who put his knee on the neck of that bloke and he died.
George Floyd.
George, that's it. Thank you. Um, is the police still perceived to be overzealous with their practices?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. A lot of people thought after the George Floyd incident that things would change, but they haven't changed at all. You can turn on the news every night in America, and you're going to hear cases about police misconducts and abuses and killings, murders of people, and particularly against minorities in America.
Right.
Particularly
Is
seems to
that
be
is
the
that
case.
ramped up more because I mean, over here, if anything's done to a minority, my goodness, it's pushed to the fore. But if you happen to be like me, middle-aged, white, and male, you can do anything to us. It won't hit the news because we are now
Yeah,
invisible.
absolutely. For the most part,
For,
unless it's a situation that happened, such as with George Floyd, where the people actually were able to record it on their cell phones,
Oh
and then if
yes,
it,
if it's a white guy doing the perpetrator, and I don't want to get into any race sort of thing, but I'm
right, right.
just making a point that in America, is it the fact that if it's a minority thing, it's reported more because more people will watch it.
Yeah, the news media, it's a sensational thing. The news
Right.
media knows it. They'll put it out there. And actually, I think it's probably a good thing because everybody should be
Oh,
treated
I
equally. So
totally agree with you.
it's a good
Yes,
thing.
yes. It's
I actually went through it. I mean, I'm white, but I consider myself a minority. My mother came here. My parents from Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia. We have a long last name, and I was arrested falsely several times, actually 10 times. I had to deal with 10 different court cases. Many of them I did on my own. I was able to represent myself and successfully get the charges dismissed. And they would call me Vukadina, excuse my language here, but Vukadina bitch is how they would get me in the station, and they would refer to me like that, which is obviously a derogatory
yes, of course.
slur. So so it happened to me as well. Now, back in the day with me, there were no cell phones back then. So all these times that were happening with me with the false arrests and brutalities, I mean, my jaw, the police broke my jaw on one of the arrests, did a lot of different things, 10 different times. And it was very hard because there was no physical evidence of what was happening. There were no cell
Mm.
phones like there is today. But just to
Yes.
make a long story short, what happened was I was with my mom in a bank on a Saturday morning. We were going to do some banking business and then go shopping. And then there was some nut doing something at the bank earlier, right before we got there, and the police were called. Well, then the police came and they went crazy, as they do many times. As if you see them on TV when they're doing these raids, they start yelling and screaming right away and so forth, like they're crazy. And
Mm.
then they grabbed me, threw me up against a wall, beat me up pretty good. And the bank people are trying to tell them that's not the person, but they were crazy.
Oh,
That they were
gosh.
trying to tell them, and
Yeah.
my mom was trying to get them off. So when they finally realized it, oh boy, now we're in trouble. We beat them up. Now we got to hit them with some false charge so we can justify what we did to them. So they hit
Right.
me with a bogus charge of some kind. I had to go to court. And if you go to court, you never know what's going to happen in court. And
No.
then if I get convicted, I could go to jail actually. So we
Yes.
went to court, and then the judge found me not guilty, and he chastised the police. Why didn't you just apologize and let them go? Why did you? So then the police chief in the newspaper after the case came out, because I was awarded an out of court settlement for the false arrest and brutality. And the police chief came out in the newspaper and said, "Oh, he should have not been paid any money. All our officers did no wrong." Well, that was a license to the rest of the police at that department to go after Vukadinovich now. Okay. I could not go to the grocery store without getting arrested for something or another
Mm.
10 times. And we don't have enough time, to talk about all that. That would be a
No,
different
no.
show.
Do you think that? I mean, over here, sadly, I mean, it is really sad that the police have lost the confidence of the public. They are seen now more as policy officers to enforce a policy and collect money. They seem to be on the side of enforcement officers rather than keeping the peace as we are supposed to do. And the whole business of policing by consent has gone out of the window. Now, let me just say, there are some genuine police officers, and of course, they get in touch with me and they say, "Hey, Richard, not all of them are like this by any means," but they do seem to be recruiting younger, dare I say, more narcissistic policemen. They seem to be profiling people so that they will perhaps operate in a way that is not the same as in the 1970s, 60s, and 70s when I was growing up, when the policeman on the beat was there as your friend and
Mhm.
protector. And now that they are, you're guilty
Right.
before proven innocent. Have they lost the confidence of the American public?
Oh, not only have they lost the confidence, it's getting worse and worse by the day. And first of all, they get so much protection by the courts, the police do. They have this thing in America called qualified immunity. I don't know if they have that in England or not, but a lot of people in America think, most people in America know qualified immunity. They all know about it. Every time somebody gets beat up or killed by the police, qualified immunity comes into play, and the news media reports on it. So a lot of people think that's a law, and it's not even a law. It's a
Right.
doctrine that was conjured up by the Supreme Court of the United States. They sat back and said, how can we protect the police? They did bad stuff here. How can we provide protection to them? So they gave them what's called qualified immunity. So then when you sue the police in America, immediately their lawyers will file court papers. Oh, no, the police are immune under qualified immunity. And it's a real hard thing to get over. You have to show how the police knew what they were doing was wrong. Like you could mind read them. It almost would take a mind reader when you could see on the surface of what they
Yes.
did. clearly was wrong. So if you can't prove with a mind reader that the police actually knew what they were, you can't sue them under qualified immunity. And that's one of the corrupt actions in the American judiciary. When the police beat you up, they should receive no protection. It should be up to a jury to see and hear the evidence
Yes.
under the Seventh Amendment. There should be no qualified immunity, but that's what's happening.
Where do you think this is going? I mean, the story so far that we've been discussing is that it's ramped up. We're seeing more corruption. The police seem to be in on it. The judges, the courts are in on it. It's all one big jolly good place for them, and not so nice for us. Where's it going to go, Brian?
Well, Richard, you hit on a good point here when you talked about how they're actually recruiting these types of people. They're not screening them. They're not obviously not doing a very, or they don't care, or they might want those kind of people in there. Because I know this. I know this. Now, think about this, for example. In America, when a person gets arrested, it's in the newspapers. It doesn't matter if the person's guilty or innocent. It's okay with the
Trial
courts. We
by
can
media.
publish. Right. Now, but when the police do something against the people and the people file a complaint against that police officer, I feel that all of the municipal corporations in America that should be public record. People who are paying the tax out of their tax dollars, the salaries of the police departments and the police officers are entitled to know if, I mean, sometimes something happens, like for example, in the George Floyd thing, then they find out, well, this cop had all kinds of things going on in his past. Why is he still there?
Mm.
So that's a big problem in the They keep them, and people generally don't know who they are. So one of the things that could take place is if they would require the all of the complaints that are filed, just like if in America, if a child molester who's been convicted or suspected or whatever moves into a certain neighborhood, the neighborhood has to be formally alerted with
Yes.
it. And they have certain laws about how the child molester cannot be this close to a school or whatever. So why is it then that these perpetrators, police perpetrators who are doing bad things to the public, okay, why is it that has to be kept secret? Why is it that the public shouldn't know about them as well? I have every right to know who the corrupt police are. Why are they there? And if they've already beaten up 15 people and you've already been paying out settlements in 15 cases, why is that corrupt police officer still there? That's the
Mm.
problem.
I mean, it's a huge problem, and this is where I think a lot of people are slightly worried. The people that might want to be policemen who have, let's say, morals and a sense of public duty and those sort of things, one would imagine that when you look at the group of people you are going to join, you may not want to join them.
Well, I can tell you this. In my case, there was a police officer that actually didn't like what was going on. He was overhearing things that were taking place. John Kuros was his name. He was one of the good ones, one of the honest ones, and he agreed to come forward and testify. He overheard the police several times talking about their plans on how they were going to get me. We actually went to the U.S. Attorney's office in Hammond, Indiana. He went there to report to the U.S. Attorney in Indiana about how they were scheming, how they were planning in advance. This is a police officer from that department was going
Yeah,
to report that to the U.S. Attorney's office, and they wouldn't meet with him.
and
They
they
would
wouldn't.
not meet with him.
That is
That's
it. I mean, it's extraordinary. That's the level of corruption in there. Now, I know you've been writing about this. I want to just quickly show your webpage because you've got a number of books and people may want to. Let me just bring it up on the screen if I remember how to do it. Here we go. There you are, looking very lovely.
that's
And here are some of the books that you've been writing because you've been writing these books over the while. Motion for Justice. Rogues in Black Robes. Are these available on Amazon?
Yes, actually, Amazon Yukon, I noticed has it on their site, and so yeah, they're available worldwide, and so people in the UK, yeah, it's in some of the public libraries in the UK as well. I was able to learn. So yeah, they people can get them on Amazon. It's worldwide. The first book, Motion for Justice, I Rest My Case, that one discusses in great detail all of the police things that happen and the things that happen in the courts with the police cases. And then the other one, Rogues in Black Robes, that one's more not so much it involves the police stuff to an extent, but mostly about how corrupt the judges are, how they fix cases, and it talks about how a judge actually fixed the case in my case against the police. It goes into great detail about that. So there's a lot of information in there.
And
So
you go around and you give talks. So it says on there, good for you, trying to get people aware of, although they're probably aware of it, but the
yeah,
level and
yeah,
the depth of it goes. It's all good stuff, and this is what, trying to talk about this stuff to get it out into the open so that they realise that we're onto them, as it were,
yeah.
because it can't go on, can it, Brian?
No, it can't go on. But unfortunately, if I had to bet, I'm going to bet that it's going to continue to go on
Right.
because the people simply, I keep telling people here in America, they need to mass protest. They need protests. Like when something real bad happens, the people will go out and protest, thousands all over the country. They need to protest against judicial corruption, against police corruption. That gets their attention. Even the legislators who are making the laws, when they see that, oh, we better do something. We can't just sit back here like we have been. The people are, they're in an uproar here. They want to be reelected and so forth. We have to use our voices, and we're not doing it. We're allowing a corrupt system to rig the system against people. Judges protect corrupt judges, protecting corrupt judges, corrupt judges protecting corrupt police. We should stand up as a country against that. We have the power, and we're just simply not doing it. Now there's a old saying, and I know you've heard it. The pen is mightier than the sword. It was coined by an English author, Edward Bulwer Lytton. You probably heard of him and that
Edward Paul
saying.
Lytton. Yes, you
And
certainly know that. A lot of people quote that the sword, the pen is mightier
right,
than the sword, of course.
he's an English author. And if people would use the pen and write like I do, and you can see it on my website. Doesn't cost any money. Go on my website. Look at the writings that I've done. People can do that. They can do exactly what I've been doing. You can write letters to the newspapers, to the editors, and so forth, and discuss the corruption. Let the law people, the legislators, the elected officials know that we are onto their game and we don't like it. No elected official likes to see his name in an article where bad things are being said that he's connected to. So the pen is very mighty. People should use that pen.
Yes, absolutely. Well, listen, Brian, thank you so much for coming and talking to me this afternoon. It may not be afternoon where you are. I imagine it's early in the morning, is it, or something?
Yeah,
But
it's 11:24 a.m. right here.
oh, there we go. Yeah, time for a coffee or something. I appreciate your time and telling us. I'll leave the link to your website in the description rather, and people can find out more about you and your books and your talks and all of that. Thank you for sharing the information about America. I think a lot of people will be interested to see how it is over there and compare what it's like over here. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, Richard. Thank you so much for having me on. I know you're doing a great job there with your shows, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here with you. It was an honor for me. Thank you.
No, thank you, and good luck with all you do. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That is Brian Vukadinovich. I hope I got that right this time.
Vukadinovich.
Vukadinovich, beg your pardon, there we are. Brian Vukadinovich and myself talking about the corruption of the courts and police, corruption and overzealous harassment, etc. Do check out the website. In the meantime, I'll be back with more monologues and wonderful guests. But from Brian and I, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, goodbye.